There comes a moment in a man's life when the ground simply gives way beneath him. It may happen in a silent bank statement, in the final words of a woman he thought would stay, or in the cold realization that someone he trusted has betrayed him. One day he is standing, carrying the weight of his responsibilities with familiar certainty, and the next he is staring at a life that no longer answers to his will. In that moment, there is no dramatic music, no warning, no mercy. Only the slow, crushing sound of a world breaking apart. If you have lived long enough, you know this pain is not theoretical. It does not ask your permission. It arrives in the body first, in the tightening of the chest, the restless nights, the anger that has nowhere to go. A man can lose money, status, even love, and still survive it. But when he loses his sense of identity, when he no longer knows who he is without what failed him, that is when the real battle begins. And yet, this is where many men make their first fatal mistake. They confuse collapse with conclusion. They tell themselves, "This is who I am now, broken, finished, defeated." But failure is not an identity. It is an event. Pain is not a verdict. It is a signal. The strongest men are not the ones who never fall. They are the ones who refuse to let the fall become their definition. Maybe you have seen this in someone you know. A man who once stood tall, then after loss became smaller, quieter, almost invisible. He stopped speaking with conviction. He stopped taking care of himself. He began to live as if life had already buried him. And maybe, if you are honest, you have felt that pull yourself. The temptation to disappear, to numb out, to surrender. But there is another path, and it begins with a hard truth. What broke you cannot be denied, only faced. No healing starts with fantasy. It starts the moment a man stops asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and begins asking, "What will I do now?" If you stay with me, we are going to walk straight into that answer. Not with empty motivation, but with the kind of wisdom that survives pressure. And if something in this message speaks to you, take a second to like this video, because what comes next may be exactly the conversation a man needs before he learns how to rebuild. The first real shock is not the loss itself. It is the silence that follows it. A man looks at the ruins of his life and realizes that the old explanations no longer work. The job is gone, the marriage is over, the trust has been shattered, and all the words that once sounded solid now feel empty in his mouth. He wakes up in the same bed, in the same house, under the same sky, but nothing about him is the same. That is the hour when weakness begins to speak in his ear. It tells him to hide, to numb out, to wait for rescue, to believe that time alone will heal what time cannot touch. But time does not rebuild a man. It only gives him a longer view of what he refuses to face. This is where the hard truth begins. Pain does not automatically make you stronger. It only exposes what was already there. If a man has built his identity on approval, comfort, or control, then suffering will strip those foundations bare. He may rage at the world. He may blame women, bosses, fate, age, or the coldness of life itself. For a while, that anger feels powerful. But anger without direction is just another form of collapse. It burns fast, leaves ashes, and still does not answer the question. Who are you when everything you used to be is gone? A wise man does not rush to escape that question. He sits with it. He lets the reality land fully. Not because he enjoys the wound, but because denial is expensive. A broken heart, a ruined business, a betrayal by someone he trusted deeply. These are not just events. They are moments that force a man to confront the structure of his soul. In that confrontation, the weak man says, "This happened to me, so my life is over." The stronger man says, "This happened to me, so now I know where the old version of me ended." If you have ever been there, you know how lonely that room feels. No applause, no audience, just the truth and your breathing. Yet that is also where the first act of rebuilding begins. Not with grand speeches, but with one honest sentence. "This hurt me, and I must not lie about it." If that line hits you, give this video a like, not for the algorithm, but because honesty deserves to be seen. And ask yourself this. When life tore away what you thought defined you, what remained standing in the silence? Because that answer is where the next part of the journey begins. The first enemy is not the loss itself. It is the story a man tells himself after the loss. He looks at the empty room, the unpaid bills, the silent phone, the cold space where trust used to live, and he says, "This is the end of me." But that is not reality. That is collapse speaking. And collapse lies. There is a moment in every great breakdown when the old identity begins to rot in plain sight. The man who once believed he could hold everything together starts to see the cracks in the foundation. The job is gone, the marriage is broken, the body is tired, the respect he thought was permanent has vanished. He sits alone at night with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor, and if you listen closely, you can hear the quiet conversation happening inside him. One voice says, "Hide." Another says, "Fight." The weak man obeys fear and disappears into numbness, distraction, and self-pity. The stronger man does something far more difficult. He stays present long enough to face what is real. This is where stoic detachment becomes a weapon. Not coldness, not denial. Detachment is the discipline of standing beside your pain instead of drowning inside it. It is looking at your life with enough distance to say, "This happened to me, but it does not get to become me." That single sentence can save a man. Because once he stops merging his identity with the disaster, he becomes capable of response. He can think again. He can breathe again. He can plan again. And yes, there is anger in this stage. Real anger. The kind that burns in the chest when you realize how much was taken from you. The betrayal, the humiliation, the wasted years, the money lost, the nights of quiet suffering nobody saw. A weak man turns that rage inward and destroys himself with shame. A wiser man learns to channel it. He uses it to wake up early, to train, to read, to rebuild the foundation stone by stone. Rage, once disciplined, becomes fuel. Pain, once understood, becomes instruction. If you are honest with yourself, you already know that suffering does not automatically make a man stronger. It only reveals what he has been relying on. That is why this part of the journey feels so brutal. It strips away excuses. It asks you to stop blaming the world long enough to ask a harder question. What kind of man will you become now? Because the answer to that question is not found in the ruins. It is found in what you choose to build from them. And once a man sees that clearly, he is no longer trapped in the wreckage. He is ready to begin again. At some point, every man who has been truly broken discovers the same bitter truth. Pain does not negotiate. It does not wait until you are ready, and it does not soften because you are proud. It arrives like winter through a cracked window, filling every room of your life with cold. And in that silence, after the shouting is over, after the bills stack up, after the phone stops ringing, after the person you trusted is gone, there is a question no one can answer for you. Who are you now? This is where weak men collapse into the story of their own ruin. They repeat the injury in their minds until it becomes a prison. They say, "I lost everything," as if loss were the end of identity. But strong men, not perfect men, not invincible men, but strong men, understand something different. They know the collapse is not the final sentence. It is the beginning of an uncomfortable education. The world stripped away what was false, what was borrowed, what was held together by convenience and illusion. What remains is the raw material of character. There is a quiet scene that happens in the life of a man after destruction. He sits alone in a dim kitchen, a cup of coffee gone cold, the house too still, the weight of his own thoughts pressing down on him. Maybe he looks out the window at a street that carries on without him. Maybe he hears his own voice say, almost in disbelief, "This cannot be how it ends." And that sentence, fragile as it sounds, is the first crack in the wall of despair. Because the moment a man refuses to let suffering define the final chapter, he creates space for something else to enter. Responsibility. Responsibility is the bridge between mourning and rebuilding. Not blame. Not fantasy. Responsibility. It means seeing the damage clearly without becoming addicted to it. It means admitting, yes, I was hurt. Yes, I was foolish in places. Yes, I failed in some ways. But it also means refusing to kneel before the wreckage forever. A man cannot rebuild his life while worshipping the ashes. He must learn to stand among them with steadiness, even when his hands are shaking. And this is where the real work begins. Not in dramatic speeches, not in revenge, not in waiting for someone else to rescue him. It begins with discipline in the dark, with sleep, with movement, with honest conversation, with cutting away what weakens him, with making one clean decision after another until the mind stops circling the wound and starts facing the road ahead. If this part of the journey feels painfully familiar, stay with me, because the next step is where the broken man starts becoming dangerous in the best possible way. There comes a point in every man's life when the pain stops being a feeling and becomes a landscape. He wakes up in it, walks through it, eats inside it, carries it in silence from room to room while the world keeps moving as if nothing happened. That is the brutal part no one tells you about. The collapse is not only the loss itself, but the way it changes the air around him. The phone stops ringing. The house feels colder. The mirror becomes less forgiving. And somewhere in that stillness, he begins to understand that nobody is coming to rescue him. This is where weak men start negotiating with reality. They keep asking, "Why me?" They replay the betrayal, the failure, the humiliation, hoping that if they think about it enough, the wound will explain itself. But pain does not offer explanations. It demands response. And the first response that matters is simple. Stand up inside your own mind before you ever stand up in the world. A strong man does not pretend the damage is small. He does not smile through shattered trust or call self-destruction courage. He looks directly at what was lost and says, "Yes, this happened." That sentence is not surrender. It is the beginning of power. Because denial keeps a man trapped in the past, while honest acceptance places his feet back on solid ground. I have seen men rebuild after losing money, family, status, and even their sense of identity. The ones who rise are not the ones who feel less. They are the ones who decide their suffering will not be the final author of their story. They stop waiting for motivation. They start with discipline. They clean the room. They take the walk. They return the call. They eat properly. They sleep. They work. They keep promises to themselves, even when no one is watching. And slowly something changes. Not all at once, not dramatically, but in quiet increments. The rage becomes focus. The grief becomes gravity. The shame becomes awareness. He begins to understand that rebuilding is not about becoming the man he used to be. It is about becoming the man pain forced him to reveal. If you've ever had to fight for your dignity when life tried to take it from you, you already know how rare that strength is. And if this speaks to you, stay with me, because the next part is where the real reconstruction begins. What separates the man who rises from the man who stays buried is not luck, and it is not comfort. It is the moment he stops asking why this happened to me and starts asking what will I become now. That question changes everything. Because once the illusion is gone, once the marriage is over, the money is gone, the body is tired, and the nights are long, a man finally sees the truth with cold clarity. He is not being punished by life, he is being revealed by it. There is a quiet strength in that realization. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that needs applause or revenge. The quiet strength of a man sitting alone in a room, staring at the wreckage, and deciding that the wreckage will not be the final chapter. He breathes differently now. He stands differently. He begins to understand that pain, when faced honestly, can either corrode the soul or forge it. And the difference is never the pain itself. It is the response. A weak man says, "I am finished." A strong man says, "Something in me ended, and something deeper can begin." That is the hidden gift inside destruction. Not because suffering is good, but because suffering strips away what was false. It burns away vanity. It exposes dependence. It humbles the proud and awakens the dormant. And in that ash, if a man is willing, he can build again. Better, clearer, harder to break. He will not rebuild in one night. He will rebuild in small, invisible acts. One disciplined morning. One honest conversation. One walk when he wanted to disappear. One refusal to drown himself in bitterness. One decision to stop romanticizing the past and start respecting the man he is becoming. This is how identity changes. Not through fantasy, but through repetition under pressure. So if your life has broken open, do not confuse pain with failure. Sometimes the collapse is the beginning of your real life. Sometimes the thing that shattered you was also the thing that freed you. And if this message speaks to something you have lived through, let it stay with you. Give it a like if you know a man needs this reminder. Tell me in the comments, what did life break in you, and what did it force you to become? And if you want to keep walking this road with wisdom, subscribe, because the next step is learning how to carry strength without becoming hard, and that lesson changes everything.